Welcome to Ride On, episode 23. I'm James Gross, and I'm joined by my co-host, Julia Thane. Julia's back in Los Angeles, it looks like. Maybe no travel this week. What's going on, Julia?
I like how part of this podcast is actually just like tracking my travels around the world. James, I mean, you're a global traveler yourself. You're a world traveler yourself, going over to Europe for Eurobike and other things. But yeah, this week I'm back in LA. It's sunny. It's hot. I got to get my Rad Runner 3 Plus and ride around a little bit. But yeah, everything's good. How about you, James?
Yeah, everything's good over here. The sun is out. Definitely not as hot as the rest of the world, it appears. Yeah, on the coast of California. So that's nice. But yeah, riding. Got some new vehicles to ride to, some new reviews.
Oh, yeah? What reviews should we be looking for to come out?
Got Emerald coming up, and got this new electric skateboard as well, which I can't totally disclose yet, but yeah, we got that as well. So
interesting.
we got a lot of riding to do.
Yeah. Announcement for next week, perhaps.
Yes, perhaps. So a couple of housekeeping items. First and foremost, we're going to do one more week of the Vela 2 giveaway. So shout out to Vela for, of course, being a part or allowing us to give away one of their amazing vehicles. We had their co-founder CEO, Justin, on the show 2 weeks ago. So we'll do that for one more week of the giveaway. You can submit your information at ridereview.com, and we will announce that winner next Thursday on the show. As well, I mentioned it last week, but I also want to say that Julia and I will also be on in audio format on the Micromobility podcast on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts and anywhere else you might listen to podcasts. That will also we will also be combining that with what was the Micromobility podcast show that Oliver Bruce and Horace Dediu did. So now, ideally, if you haven't listened to them before, by subscribing to our channel on any of those podcast stations, you'll get both Julia and I in audio format, along with Oliver's and Horace's podcast as well. So just one more shout out there. And Julia, one final announcement that I'm really excited about is, for the first time ever at Micromobility America in October, the second day, the Friday, we will be doing an official Ride Expo, or Ride On Expo, you might want to call it. This will be a day dedicated fully to anyone from the public in the area, or anyone that wants to come in, of course, from around the world, to come and ride all the vehicles that will be exhibiting at Micromobility America. This will be everything from electric bikes to scooters to mopeds to motorcycles and neighborhood electric vehicles. And this is the first time we've ever done this. And we're taking a lot of the momentum that we saw in Europe, of course, with our DJ ride with Dom Whiting, and we're trying to apply it to a full day of just kind of fun, where we'll have music, and of course we'll have test tracks, and then we'll also just have the broader, beautiful Bay Area where you can ride along the Bay Trail all the way from, say, Richmond. You could take the vehicle to San Francisco, I guess, if you wanted on the ferry, and then of course all the way down to Oakland. So yeah, full day. The coolest thing about this is, the price is $5 from that right now if you buy now. So the price will go up a little bit, but basically we're trying to make this as accessible as possible to as many people as possible that are interested in the micromobility movement, that want to ride on these vehicles and want to try them out. And of course, we'll have amazing vendors that will give you the opportunity to do that. So yeah, what do you think, Julia? Are you excited for this?
James, it sounds awesome. I'm very excited. I'm secretly hoping that my $5 ticket will get comped. Maybe I can just get there for free. We'll see. But James, I am also very excited. I'm sure all of the brands are going to be wanting to show the various micromobility vehicles, and I imagine that this will be a great way of familiarizing the rest of the Bay Area with just like the diversity of micromobility vehicles there are. One thing I do hope, actually two things I do hope. One is that folks can actually buy vehicles on site. I don't know whether or not we're going to be able to do that through the Expo, but it'd be amazing if somebody could just like walk home, or rather ride home with their new micromobility vehicle. And the second is, James, why are we getting DJ Don Whiting to come to the Bay? Like with that rave ride, like single-handedly the best part of Micromobility Europe, not just my opinion, was also kind of your opinion, even though when we tried to both talk about what our favorite parts of Micromobility Europe were, we kind of that up. But in any case, I think I think DJ Don Whiting is going to make another appearance at Micromobility America.
Okay, well, don't scoop us, Julia. We got to figure out. It's not easy to acquire talent this far in advance of a show. And that's a big vehicle to go across the Atlantic with,
That's true.
and all
That's
the way
true. You
across
might have to,
America.
yeah, we might have to
Um,
get the Titanic too to ship over the vehicle.
Totally. So yeah, we will have some fun. We will definitely have music. We will definitely have rides. And yeah, stay tuned. We'll link to it in the show notes. We hope you can make it. Of course, if you want more details, it's also in the Micromobility and the Ride Review newsletters that was out today. So yeah, hope to see you there. And hopefully, it's the type of ticket that, while still $5 right now, it's something that we get a lot of people to really afford and be a part of. And with that, that's it for announcements, Julia. Let's send it over to you for the news.
Yeah, well, James, this isn't as big a news week as it was last week, with the news of Vanmoof and Cowboy and even some of the shared mobility providers that have actually done quite well and are reaching profitability. I just wanted to give a few updates on the story about Vanmoof in particular before jumping into the news from this week. There have been some very good articles that have come out about, the implications for the rest of the industry of what has happened with Vanmoof. Would definitely encourage people to go to Zag Daily, to go to TechCrunch, to check out some of those articles. What they say overall, really, and it's some good testimonials too, both from leaders in the industry and then just from folks who have Vanmoof bikes themselves, is that, sentiment is split. In one way, what people are grateful for Vanmoof is that they did set a precedent in the industry for an e-bike that was cool, that was a luxury product, that was something that, especially if you were in the tech community, you sort of aspired to have. And so it set, in many ways, the e-bike industry off in a different direction than it was before, and even widened the aperture of folks who might be interested in an e-bike. On the other hand, a lot of these stories are also talking about issues with repairs, maintenance, and even the way in which Vanmoof rather shut down or paused its sales and its payments. And I think what this part of the story, the fact that it was so abrupt that in one, anecdote, for example, there was a guy who had left his Vanmoof in the repair center, and actually the doors were locked, so he couldn't get it. So his Vanmoof bike is just stuck in the repair center itself. I think what this really shows us is that there's a continued importance of continuity in how direct-to-consumer brands, including ones that go under, interact with their customers. And there's a way to do that well, there's a way to do that poorly. So I think, again, implications for the industry of what's happened with Vanmoof is that it's so important to create some of this brand loyalty, to set out a really high quality product that attracts a number of customers from the onset and maybe diversifies the base of who wants an e-bike. At the same time, you can't forget what the customer experience is all along the customer experience, whether that means you're selling them the bike, maintaining the bike, or finally having to close down shops and businesses. So James, I'm wondering if you're hearing, again, before I jump into the news from this week, wonder if you're hearing any more fallout from what's been happening with Vanmoof, or had any other reflections from our conversation last week.
Yeah, that's really well said and well reported. I actually took a little bit of the inspiration from our conversation last week, and I put that up on LinkedIn and, tried to explain what some of my take, I guess, but our take that was a little different than what I was reading about. One being sort of like Europe, specifically the culture in Amsterdam not supporting Vanmoof like I think they should have, and why a company that ambitious most likely, if you look at the data, would have done much better founded in the US than Europe. That wasn't a very popular opinion based on some of the comments I got back.
Was it not? Oh, really? You pissed off a bunch of Europeans? Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't mean to. Just tried to tell the truth again. Just let the data show the story, whether or not you want to hear that.
You should have posted on 4th of July just to really hammer home the point.
Wow.
Yeah.
And my American. No, it's not like that. It's just the data. I'm just trying to explain the data. And then the second, and again, this is where maybe I'll end it, because I think we're getting a little bit too mournful about a company that was never that big in the context of like vehicle sales, which is, I think the form factor ultimately did it in a lot of ways in terms of really seeing the demand for Vanmoof, and it appealing more to a cyclist and maybe like the concept of what we think the future of mobility would be like. Like someone in the comments actually made a really good point. Like the original Model T was really like, it looked like a horse carriage, right? And you look at, now we drive like tanks around, right? Because it doesn't look like a horse carriage at all. And I think there's a lot of that to be understood in our world, which is An e-bike is not a bike, and I think that the people that understand that are winning the most. So, shout out, hail up to Vanmoof and the ambition, but we will, the only progress is forward, and there's much bigger players in the space that are serving customers, and I hope those stories continue to come out, and this isn't just haterade for people that want to, not believe this movement's real. That's it.
Haterade. Nice.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that one in a while, so thanks for bringing that back into the everyday lexicon. I hope Gen Z adopts this, and then it just becomes something that we talk about on a day-to-day basis. All right, James. So on to some more good news stories now, and actually back across the pond into Europe. We've got some new data coming out from London that reveals that in the city of London, bicycles now represent a larger portion of city traffic than cars. So first of all, a quick geography lesson for those who don't know. London is actually made up of boroughs, rather. And so this data is coming from the city of London, which is actually a 1 square mile area where you have a lot of the banks, financial institutions, etc. So we're not talking about the whole Greater London, just to clarify, not talking about the whole Greater London, talking about the city of London. Nonetheless, this is very important because this is where a lot of people work. In the city of London, when they did a count of traffic, they found that cycles represented 26.8% of traffic versus 25.8% for cars. The next biggest category was vans, then taxis, then motorcycles, buses and coaches, and lorries. So really, really interesting that in 2022, finally, bicycles surpassed cars in terms of traffic in the city of London. I think, honestly, what you're going to be seeing is that this trend is going to be replicated across Greater London, especially as the Greater London invests in more bike lanes. So I'm very, very excited for the next time I go to London, get to bike around, and also get to see how many cycles are outnumbering cars. Similarly, James, we've got the royal family that's finally getting into. I know, we're getting royal in micromobility. So the royal family is finally getting into micromobility, and it's been reported. Is that your crown? Did you just put a crown on?
Okay. Like LeBron.
Okay, but anyway, back to this news story. So, James, which royal do you think purchased an electric scooter?
Well, there's not a lot left over there, right? So
there's tons left. Are you kidding? Everybody's a royal in the UK.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm thinking about the big dogs. I only know a couple of them. Let's go with William.
Of course, it's William. I mean, obviously it's William. So Prince William has bought an electric scooter. He's traveling around the Windsor estate on his electric scooter, which, I'm sure is actually kind of a long distance. It's probably bigger than the city of London. And so there have been, photos, videos of him traveling around on an electric scooter. Prince William is actually also a big fan, allegedly, of motorbikes. So who knows? Maybe the next time we'll see Prince William on an electric motorbike. And then we'll find that we have our own micromobility influencer in a British royal. What do you think of that, James?
I think that's real. And yeah, I think the story goes that the estate is like 2 to 3 miles, and he found it to be, completely inefficient to be hauled around in a car, too far to walk. The cool thing is, I think in the US, I know this is true. I think it's also true in the UK, basically 3 miles is roughly is more than 50% of all trips in the US and single car occupancies. So it's like what William is coming to the realization of is this is a very dumb way to move around, and it's probably much funner and much cleaner and kind of cooler to do it on a different type of small vehicle. So that's a cool realization, and of course coming from what is a prestigious person. And so you hope you can kind of take that logic and apply it to all kinds of trips that happen around the UK or happen around the US.
And yeah, I mean, definitely, James, it is cool that he logicked his way into a scooter rather than having to do it for any other reason. What the story didn't report is what brand electric scooter Prince William is using. So if anybody knows, drop it in the comments. Would love to know, and also would love to invite that company onto Ride On Podcast so they can do a giveaway. And so whoever is a recipient of this giveaway can be like Prince William and ride around like a royal, which actually, speaking of which, that's a good tagline for a company, ride like a royal. All right, so back to the news. So James, also in Europe, last week, Paris City Hall signed a new measure and will charge larger and heavier vehicles a fee for city parking, or a higher fee for city parking. what I thought was really interesting about this new measure is that the law is aimed at discouraging auto-besity and then also incentivizing the use of smaller vehicles. So leave it to the French to come up with a clever pun like auto-besity. One of the reasons why the officials did this is they said the number of SUVs in the city has increased by 60% over the last 4 years rather. SUVs are now making up 15% of the little more than a million private vehicles parked in Paris every evening. So again, we're seeing officials who are actually getting the courage to make some change and to start imposing, actually imposing the externalities of these larger, heavier vehicles onto the vehicle owners themselves. James, do you think we'll see this anywhere else?
Well, first I want to know, are you a fan of fat car shaming? Is this okay to do? Or
fat car shaming? Interesting.
Yeah, auto-besity is like you're calling someone like their car like fat and you're shaming them. Like, is that okay?
I didn't think about that. I have a little bit of a visceral reaction to that, maybe because I grew up as a girl in America, and so any sort of fat shaming, just whether it's a car or a person, I'm just not down for. So let me dip my toes in the water for that. But for right now, I feel like I'm not going to be fat shaming any cars. Are you going to be fat shaming cars, James?
No, I mean, I don't. I think it's it's just funny. There's a little bit of irony, I feel like, with the group that's probably leading this auto-besity charge also being the type of group that might not want to fat shame people. So I think there might be some hypocrisy here. And so, yeah, I'm not a fan. I don't think it's good. I think it's alarming that clearly everyone's driving an SUV now in Paris, because the math won't pencil out there. So I guess shaming is one way to do it. And then, of course, I think all the other things they're doing. On that note, Julia, though, so in my first news story of the day, staying over, on the other side of the world, the news out of the Ukraine, I don't know if you saw this, but there's British soldiers that are actually looking to adopt electric bikes with rocket launchers on them for some of their reconnaissance and journeys, potentially all around the world. These are pretty gnarly photos. These are pretty big rocket launchers on these electric bikes. We've talked in the past how Cake has promoted a lot of their electric motorbikes for anti-poaching, and that's kind of a nice feel-good story. This is a little bit more hey, this is straight up war, and potentially the best way to launch a missile, a rocket off of, is from an electric bike. And so it's pretty wild. While we have Paris, this, the city of love, this beautiful place, where it's being inundated by vehicles that look like tanks, the SUVs today. I mean, again, I'm just shocked at every new edition I see where they increasingly look like they're tanks. But then the actual soldiers are not using SUVs. They're using, of course, these really small electric vehicles because it's way better for how they want to move around. It's way quieter. It's way more efficient. It's way faster. There's also, Julia, I don't know if you've seen this, but on Reddit and other places, all the one-wheel channels are showing how a lot of Ukrainian soldiers are using one wheels on the battlefield. And it's wild. We'll show the video. They're literally, the way they're moving off-road. And of course, the arguments would be, oh, well, you can't do that in the mud, right? In the wet season. Sure. But a one wheel is a couple $1,000s, for the price of a Jeep, they could literally outfit them with these things differently or use just different motorbikes when it is wet or super rainy. But yeah, the videos, I mean, it's incredible the way these soldiers are using one wheels to move around, navigate, of course, literally fight a war. So I think there's a story there, Julia. We, as people, as citizens, we're arming ourselves with tanks. Our soldiers that actually fight wars are arming themselves with small electric vehicles. And then there's just so much history around the vehicle in wars, right? There's a lot of amazing reporting from World War II, right? So World War II in America, for instance, we took over a lot of the automobile factories and we turned them into tank factories. The Sherman tanks came out of the Ford factories in Detroit, but also here in California, even where we're going, where micromobility is. It used to be a Ford factory. It was converted to make Sherman tanks during World War II. They put those tanks on Liberty ships, which are right in the bay that Kaiser and his teams made. But also the other innovation that Ford and the team came up with was we not only can make Sherman tanks, which the other amazing story there is that was mostly women making those tanks, but we can make Jeeps, and we can modularize the Jeeps so we can containerize them, meaning we can put them in these like really efficient containers and ship them across. And if you know like any of the stories from World War II, like one of the things that there's a lot of documentation on is how the German soldiers were like just, amazed by all these Jeeps that were all of a sudden in Europe, and like, where did they come from and how did the Americans do this? Well, it was from like, really innovative styles from entrepreneurs thinking differently. It was from like using like the latest and greatest in mobility to like win a war basically. And those Jeeps were smaller. They were like, and again, you could modularize them, you take them apart, put them back together really easily. And so it's just kind of cool that like, in many ways they say, there's a famous saying, which is like the Jeeps and the Liberty ships won World War II. You could argue, or, two of the most important technologies that won World War II. You could make the argument maybe that like maybe small electric vehicles are going to have a huge impact on the Ukraine war. Which again, I know I'm going off here a little bit too long, but there's like so many cool little parallels here that probably have probably right now what we're seeing will one day have a really important impact on how we think about moving, and hopefully might make some consumers realize they can make different decisions on mobility. So yeah, do you have thoughts there, Julia?
Yeah, I mean, the main thought that comes to mind, James, is a lot of the innovation in the U.S., right, is spurred on by defense spending. We have huge budgets for our Department of Defense. We have huge budgets for defense generally. And some of those dollars aren't necessarily spent on, battles or wars, or even on, technologies that are explicitly war technologies or battle technologies. And so it makes me think that whether it's in the Ukraine or whether it's here, whether it's elsewhere, maybe what you might start seeing actually is more defense budget being spent on small electric vehicles, and this better sense of how small electric vehicles could fit in with either the movements around bases, or for that matter, the movements in the actual out in the field for people. So I would say for me, that's my takeaway of like what might be a positive or a benefit of this. The other thing that comes to mind, James, is that we did have a few people actually reach out to us about having some conversations at Micromobility America around how Army, Navy, Air Force are using lightweight electric vehicles. So it might actually be time to have those conversations and start figuring out whether in this case there is a there for how lightweight electric vehicles are being used across, even more scenarios than, we could possibly imagine. So not too much of a tangent, James. I think an interesting trend, and from my perspective at least, it is all about spurring the innovation, directing a little bit more funding into the manufacturing of these things. And again, I think also starting to think about domestic manufacturing of micromobility vehicles, whether it's in the U.S. or whether it's in other places they're manufacturing domestically.
I absolutely love that. Like, yes, like totally challenge accepted. We've got to do more. We should have more discussions on stage around defense spending, and even pointing more micromobility entrepreneurs potentially towards the government and towards government contracts. Because you're totally right. Like we gotta have this conversation. Let's stop talking about weird policy conversations at the local level. Let's talk about like what should we be doing?
No, we can't. We can't get away from the weird policy conversations at the local level.
I mean,
but we definitely can expand.
It's like I think I heard someone say that on Twitter already. That's not interesting. Let's talk about
Was it you? Yeah.
No.
Are you quoting yourself?
No.
Yeah, James Gross said. Yeah.
No. I'm just criticizing your policy panels. No, sorry.
Wow. Oh my God. All right, James. Well, with that said, should we go over to you for the launches?
Yes, we should. Okay, so some really cool vehicles out that are super amazing, and like we're really excited about. The first up is Tesla. So Tesla actually makes a small electric vehicle. And so their Cybertruck, which is inspired for kids, basically, their four-wheeler, is done really well. It's sold out in the US, and they're actually going to start to sell it in China as well. Now, that was their announcement. So I actually never seen a Tesla four-wheeler around. Have you, Julia? Up there, the
only in the launch. But that was the thing that when they launched the Cybertruck, I don't know if you remember this, but they had the quad come out of the back of the Cybertruck, and it was like the coolest part. Like the Cybertruck itself was kind of weird looking, and when they tried to test the windows and said they were unbreakable, both of the windows broke, so it was just like underwhelming to say the least. But the quad looks cool.
I agree. And, like shout out to those guys for doing that, but also like, let's see more small electric vehicles. You are all very capable. You're all amazing inventors over there at Tesla. There are plenty of other vehicles that you could make that don't look like a sedan. So I hope you take that challenge on, and let's see more of that. Another one, Julia, actually from when I was at Eurobike, I got to meet a company called, I think you pronounce it, Cixi or Cixi, Cixi.
I doubt that it's sexy.
I think it is. I met him.
No, I don't think so.
I think he said it's sexy. I think he said it's sexy. I swear. He was French. He was flirting with me. And I think he said my company is sexy.
Good try, James.
I'm telling you, it's true. So we'll roll the film of me riding this thing. But this is Cixi has a chainless drive system that's super great. And they announced a collaboration with Look Bikes for their chainless technology. Of all the chainless technology I've ridden, I think Cixi's felt the best. It felt the most sexy, maybe. And it was really cool. And the other thing, stop rolling your eyes.
You're having like too much fun with this joke. It's like a lot. Can you just tone it down a little bit? All right. Okay. Continue.
Okay. Sorry. But the other thing that Cixi announced is that they think they can get their chainless drives up to like 75 miles per hour. And so clearly you can start to think about chainless drives, not just in e-bike or, a class 1, class 2, class 3, small vehicle, but you can see it in maybe motorcycles and dirt bikes and other things, of course, that go a lot faster. So that's really cool. And shout out to them for getting that out. We should have them on the pod at some point. Another announcement is from Borealis. They have, of all the vehicles we reviewed in the e-bike category, I've actually never seen a 5-inch fat tire, like a true fat tire that's 5-inch, that's made for mountain biking. They've announced their first mountain bike. It's called the Keystone. It has a 5-inch tire on it. Moving on, Velotric has make beautiful bikes. They have, of course, in the theme that we've seen so much, Julia, they have 2 new cargo bikes out. One's long tail. And again, just like the 5-inch tire is getting slightly bigger, the thing that's pretty impressive about these electric vehicles is they have a carrying capacity up to 440 pounds, which again, for the size of them, and you look at them, you think, wow, you can carry 440 pounds on this thing. But yeah, so just super cool and super interesting. And then finally, on the point of we're starting to bring more electric skateboards, TrackPod has a new skateboard out, and it's their first electric model, and it's supposed to really try to feel like being on a snowboard. So I tried to get out. Yeah, there's videos out there of it, but that's cool. And a lot of people like to cruise like a snowboard. Now you can do it without snow in a mountain. So yeah, shout out to them. Any thoughts there, Julia, before we invite our guests onto the stage?
Yeah, I mean, I think this idea of e-besity is a good one. I'm just going to see if I can make that happen. One of the reasons why I think it is actually a good thing to be seeing bigger micro-mobility vehicles is that they're car replacers. So when you have a smaller electric vehicle, you can't carry as much. It's not necessarily going to be replacing your everyday car. If you have a car, it might not even be replacing the need to have a second car if you have a larger family and feel like you need to have a second car and are privileged enough to be able to buy one. But I think when you have these larger vehicles that you can presumably go in garages or whatever else, then all of a sudden you have something that could feasibly replace both your first and, potentially also a second car. So that's really, really interesting. Not to mention the fact that some of the vehicles that you mentioned, James, feel like they could also work for a defense use case. So I think the last thing I would say is I am not a skateboard rider. I don't actually know how to ride a skateboard. So I'm curious about the electric skateboards because I'm wondering if those are easier to ride, especially for people who want to look like they're cool and from SoCal, but don't necessarily know how to ride a skateboard. So I'm curious to check that out.
All right, Julia, we have Eliott Wertheimer, who is the CEO and founder of LAVOIE, who's going to join us here on stage. They have their first scooter that they're actually launching, that they launched actually at Micro America in June, and they're taking their first pre-orders. And yeah, we've got Eliott here to talk more about that and the background on LAVOIE. So welcome, Eliott. How are you doing today?
Good, and you? Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, of course, no problem. It's great to see you again, Eliott. We got to see you on stage at Micro America. Micro Europe just last month. So it's good to be back in touch. So in terms of the background on the scooter, of course, Eliott, your experience founding the company, you being a part of McLaren, I think McLaren kind of speaks for its own in terms of like what the products that have been made there, and just the amazing innovation, design, and just the appeal of the McLaren brand. So now you have, of course, LAVOIE. I think that where I'd love to start is, and I saw you talk about this on stage, so I'm interested in I thought you had a really good answer. Like, how do you think about an electric bike versus an electric scooter, and why potentially an electric scooter over an electric bike? Clearly, we think it's not a zero-sum game. You don't have to just have one, not the other. But why? Pitch the audience on why you think the electric scooter is better for a lot of rides than an electric bike.
So that's a very good question, actually. So the first thing I want to slightly correct is LAVOIE is a subsidiary of McLaren Applied rather than McLaren, and McLaren Applied is now a separate company. They were, of course, built together and part of the same group, but now they operate as two separate entities. Also, still very close links, but separate company. I have to highlight that. So it's a very interesting question, because when we got into this, we had a very, agnostic engineering approach, which was to say, okay, you now have amazing materials available to you, amazing, power electronics, new brushless DC motors, new battery cells. You can make, much more powerful with higher energy capacity vehicles that can be also lighter and potentially cheaper than they would have had to be, 10 years ago. So we didn't go in there thinking, let's do e-scooters specifically. We went in there looking at what is the best configuration you can have to exploit, the physics of these new technologies, right? And make them as efficient as possible to solve the issues that, micromobility are here to solve, which are, of course, noise, pollution, congestion, helping traffic, basically, helping people live better lives in urban environments, and beyond that, of course, in the countryside. That's the key factor. And so when we looked at it, obviously the most basic structure you look at is having wheels, and then you want to put the motor and the battery as close to each other as possible, right? So effectively, you get to kind of an electric skateboard, basically, right? That's as compact and small as you can get, where everything is super close together and very light, and it works well. Now, the problem with skateboards is that you have, it's tough to be balanced on them. You need some experience, you need some confidence that most of the population won't have. And so how do you get better from there? Well, you add a handle to make sure that the whole thing is stable, right? And when you do that, by increasing slightly the size of the wheels and having two wheels, you suddenly have a much, much better riding experience. And the whole thing starts to make sense, where you get all the power, energy, and, together very close with good range, good speed, and so on. And at the same time, you have a good handle that you can place, looking at ergonomics in a way where you get a lot of stability, a lot of comfort also when you ride, right? And that's the e-scooter, right? So the approach was very physical and say mathematical. Like, we looked at it properly, and the e-scooter is actually the best configuration to have optimal, micromobility vehicles, right? Now, when you look at e-bikes, I think, and that's my opinion, of course, but I think what happened is, they're a much older vehicle that, society is very used to. They've been very widely used in many countries all over the world for a long time. Specifically with adults, right? It's something that adults are used to. They grew up with them, and they've seen their parents using them. They've seen their family using them. So e-bikes are, first of all, a much easier thing to adopt in your daily life, right? It's much easier to use them on a daily basis. The second thing is, e-bikes do have a thing that scooters don't have, is that they offer you the possibility, of course, of riding to the office, without breaking your sweat, and then coming back, doing a little bit of sports, fitness, and so on. Of course, also allowed to, compensate people that used to love cycling, aren't able to do it anymore, to keep cycling at their own pace, take hills they couldn't take before for, either old age or, maybe handicaps and so on. So e-bikes do bring you that, right? So they have their good stuff, and there was something that was much more easily adopted by society, because people are, I think, much more used to them. Now, the opinion that's objective is that the e-scooter is a better vehicle. Purely, it's more like a magic carpet, right? You jump on it, press a button, and you really go where you want. You don't have to break a sweat. It is really a vehicle purely, right? And I think the reason it hasn't been as widely adopted as the e-bike is very similar to what I explained, which is but the opposite, which is kids are like, me when I was a kid, I was using a scooter to go around, but I never saw my dad or my mom on it. I never saw people older than myself actually use them in their professional daily lives, right? So that's the first thing. So to me, it was a kid's toy. And then when big companies came into that, started, in a way democratizing them, when you had Xiaomi and Segway come in the market, they approached it from the lower end, which was making e-scooters as cheaply as possible as the first entrance. And when you do that, of course, you've got to sacrifice on quality, you've got to sacrifice on how long the product's going to last, on stability, on the feel and how it looks and feel when you touch it, right? And that tended to maybe create a little bit of a bad reputation for e-scooters, that they are products perceived as more toys than actual vehicles you can use every day, in a professional setting beyond just a short family trip or something, or playing with your kids. I think these are the fundamental issues that mark the difference. They're both great solutions, and I think the e-scooter is just a better vehicle, but e-bikes also has amazing advantages in other things.
Great, thank you for that. Julia, do you have anything for Eliott?
Yeah, first of all, I wanted to plus one a comment that you made, Eliott, about electric scooters being like hopping on a magic carpet ride. That needs to go somewhere. That's beautiful. I love that idea. I love that image.
Julia,
Eliott,
do you remember when we were originally talking about this show, we talked about maybe calling it Magic Carpet Ride? I think you were like, absolutely.
We never talked about that. We absolutely did not.
You missed out, guys. That's a good one.
Yeah. James came up with all the worst titles. But yeah, no, we're absolutely not calling it the Magic Carpet Ride. Ride on is way better. Yeah.
I mean, she loves it from
Eliott,
you, not from me, Eliott. Sorry.
That's true. Yeah, no, Eliott. So, okay, that comment aside, I think I have a few, questions for you, some of which are more relevant to the scooter and some of which aren't. So first of all, Eliott, one of the things we're seeing, I recognize you're now part of McLaren Applied, so not a McLaren, but we are seeing a lot of lightweight electric cars come out, baby Bugattis. We just talked about a Cybertruck quad. There have been other vehicles that we've reported on where it's just like a smaller size of a very noteworthy and prestigious vehicle. What do you think? Is that are we going to see a McLaren come out, or is that in your trajectory too, even in LAVOIE, thinking about, or LAVOIE, even in thinking about how you get into that lightweight electric car space?
Look, that's a very good question. I think it's also a very interesting trend. It really much aligns with, the observation that cars currently are quite inefficient because, for cities, they're great for long distances. Once you get beyond cities and you move across, wide distances. But in urban environments, you want the vehicles that are as compact as possible, right? And that if you're going to use them just yourself or with your partner or with your kid, you don't need that much space, right? For short distances from your house to work, etc. So I think they're also a very useful, interesting vertical to develop. The truth is, I can't speak for group. They always have all these amazing projects, so maybe it's true.
Sure.
Applied as
maybe
well.
It's already in the works, yeah.
Well, exactly. Applied also has fantastic, projects and technologies they're developing. So, that might be the pipeline. I'm not really aware of it now, but I think for us, the best thing I can say about the strategy at LAVOIE is really, it's really looking at the fact that if you look at urban mobility, we really believe that the e-scooter is the best solution right now to develop. Why? Because e-scooters have a perception issue which can be solved if the right ones are produced, right? If you suddenly start producing and distributing e-scooters that feel like vehicles or as safe as vehicles, they last, over 10,000 kilometers. The performance is amazing. The connectivity is automotive grade. The manufacturing is automotive grade. The support and after sales is automotive grade. Then progressively, people are going to start using them more, and understanding them as vehicles, right? So as it sounds, it's not an easy thing to do. We spent years developing, our Series 1 together. I think we're there now, so about to deliver the first ones, but it's very difficult. So once we've successfully achieved that, why not, it's I think mobility, urban mobility, electrifying, transportation, throughout society is extremely important. That's why you guys are doing that podcast, I guess, and further than that. So yeah, literally. So definitely in the future, we would look at that, but there's many very interesting vehicles to look into, right? Of course, e-scooters and again, e-bikes are a great option. You also have ATVs. You have many applications, of different types of vehicles in different environments that honestly need to be electrified, because electrification and electrical power systems have got to a point where objectively, honestly, they're better than fuel system, than combustion engine. And the only thing that is kind of blocking it right now, obviously, is you need time for people to be able to buy new vehicles and stuff. But it's honestly, it's not even a engine, on one charge, you can go quite far with whatever vehicles. I mean, on the Series 1, the max version with 700 watt hours, you can probably last a week of commuting before you charge it properly, right? So, I mean, it's good enough. The thing is, same with cars, you can drive hundreds of miles now on one charge. The problem is charging speed, right? And you have to look at fuel and combustion engines as being charged also. Like what you're doing is transferring energy. The difference is that when you do it with fuel, you're just pouring a liquid, which is effectively your energy, your electricity, and that goes super quick, super fast, and it's very energy dense, right? With electricity, you need time to charge it, and it reduces a little bit the functional use of the system. But honestly, now I think we're almost at that point where there's not really a reason to go for combustion, at least for cars and smaller vehicles, even motorbikes and stuff like that. It's getting to the point. So sorry for the very long answer. My point
No, all
is
good.
definitely LAVOIE will look at other types of vehicles in the future, as long as we can, help redefine, the way people perceive small vehicles and really, help people be confident in them and accelerate their adoption. That would be great. And I think first, there's a massive need and opportunity on the e-scooter side to just create e-scooters that people are effectively proud to own, to go around with, and they can live their life and ride with confidence, reach their goals and stuff without being
looks good, works well, rides like a magic carpet, right? So Eliott,
exactly, right? It lies with that, you see, the magic carpet for sure.
So James, I'm going to go back to you in a second for maybe a final question to close this out. But Eliott, the other thing I've been really curious about, so we've heard from a lot of founders who are effectively trying to reinvent, whatever vehicle that they're doing. And so normally they start with a blank sheet of paper or, blank screen and just say designers, don't even think about a bike, don't even think about a scooter, just design something that's really functionally going to fit whatever the rider needs and also, is going to look cool. So here's my question. How much of this process do you all do using designers, and how are you starting to use artificial intelligence in both the design process and then also in manufacturing? Are you using AI at all?
That's a very good question. So in terms of industrial, so when you're trying to do, like you said, like many founders are trying to do, which is, really create high quality, beautiful vehicles, because, function and aesthetics almost go hand in hand. Right? When you buy something with that premium purpose, you also look at the way it looks, obviously. So in terms of industrial design, in my, personal limited experience, nothing comes close to talented automotive industrial designers and their teams. So we worked with Callum and people at McLaren, McLaren. So right now, to design the vehicle in terms of the aesthetics and the function, obviously we went through very talented automotive people. The engineering still has to be solved by clever engineers, because some of it can be very challenging, depending on what you're doing. And that requires, basically, in my opinion, what requires creativity and thinking out of the box and finding new solutions that don't really exist yet. You need the human still, AI is not at that point yet, right? Now, when you can start optimizing, definitely you're right, is, probably assembly lines and specifically how you procure parts, how some parts can be designed also, and how you organize the whole assembly lines and optimize it for, cost and quality and make sure everything works well. And that's the superficial, realistic business approach. Now, if you go deep into what's achievable today, you can have a look, and that was already the case a while ago. You have some people creating algorithms that can, optimize the way structure is built with certain materials to minimize the weight and make sure that the strength is what it is required to be with minimal weight, and they create beautiful netted structures. I think Airbus did a cool e-bike at the time. So you get all these techniques over how you can do, but to answer your question, I don't think at all that we're at the point where ChatGPT could, fully design and engineer a beautiful electric vehicle end to end, but I'm sure that, AI might be not too far and could get close, but I don't know enough about it right now to tell you whether it's there. The truth is right now, I think most manufacturers that try to push it in terms of premium and really high quality vehicles are still going through, talented engineers, talented industrial designers, people that have experience with supply chain and assembly lines. And obviously, ultimately, and I personally think it will get there, AI will take over some of those functions. But the creative side is tough to reproduce with artificial intelligence. That's something to be seen in the future.
Yeah, totally. And shout out to Kelm Design. I saw that you worked with them quite closely. It seems like on the vehicle, and they seem like they do really amazing work. Eliott, we're out of time, but I want to ask some rapid fire question, if you don't mind, just kind of keeping your response to one or two words. The first one is the origami style design. Who came up with it? Did you come up with it in the shower, on a run?
No. That
was the credit for the origami style.
So that's a few Formula One ex-Formula One engineers from McLaren Applied that came up with that design, to basically looking at Formula One suspensions to make a very compact thing with a wide base. And so.
Yeah, I like it. We'll show it. It's very cool, very clever, a very awesome idea around how to fold. I think folding is critical with electric scooters, and I think that's an elegant design. So congratulations on that. The next one is, if I'm here in the US, I go to LAVOIE Electric right now. I want to buy the vehicle. I buy it today. When am I going to get that vehicle in my home?
Probably November, early to mid-November 23. Yeah. But basically, now we're basically building the tooling and assembly lines, like prototypes are validated, software validated, app done, everything's done. So we're just building the assembly lines to be able to deliver the product, I think, around November in the US. The US is probably going to be the country that gets it first, I think, by a few days, weeks, yeah.
Okay, yeah, we're excited to see it here in the US. I think you got a lot of potential riders here. And then final questions, I'll steal Julia's thunder here. If you can't ride the LAVOIE Series 1, because, it's in the shop, or, just it's out of battery for some reason, what is the vehicle you're riding, Eliott? If you couldn't ride the LAVOIE Series 1?
If I couldn't ride the LAVOIE Series 1, I have an Indian FTR motorcycle that I absolutely love.
Okay, that's a good answer.
And that might be a bit controversial here, but, let's say motorcycles are the solution in between, the efficient. But that's a love, passion thing that I raise.
Nothing wrong with that. You got to have passion when you ride. So, yeah, then hopefully we'll see a lot of people with passion when they're riding the Series 1 around as well. So,
thank
Eliott,
you so much, James.
With that, I want to thank you for being on here, and I want to wish you best of luck. And for everyone at home, of course, we'll put the link in the show notes. But you can order a Series 1, and as you heard here at first from Eliott, you'll get that in November. So yeah. And finally, Eliott, are we going to see you at Micromobility America in October?
Yes, I think so. I'll do my best to be there. It's definitely in the pipeline for sure, guys.
Yes, shout out to that. So if you want to ride it before November, of course you can ride it at Micromobility America, the LAVOIE Series 1. So yeah. Thanks again, Eliott. Have a wonderful day, guys. And keep on making great products. Okay. All right, Julia, that was LAVOIE. Are we going to see you on a scooter? And then also, I really think the origami fold is like perfect for you when you're always saying, you're interested in lighter weight vehicles, where you live, and be able to move them up and down stairs. Is this the scooter for you? You're shaking your head now?
No, I just don't know. I mean, This is the good thing about Micromobility America and the Expo that we announced today, which is that I'm going to ride them all. I'm thinking, James, that we actually get the equivalent of like bingo cards or something for Micromobility America, and whoever fills out the most spots on their bingo card gets like a free electric vehicle or something. So we incentivize people to try all of them. But that's going to be me. Like, I think it's amazing that we have all of these different types of vehicles. I'm super excited about getting to try them out. And a origami foldable bike, or a scooter rather, sounds like it could be interesting. But I'm not going to make any choices until I get to ride them in person.
There we go. The bell of the ball. We got to see what happens. Amazing. I love it. Okay. Well, Julia, awesome week. As you recap there, head to micromobility.io to buy your Expo tickets. If you're in the greater West Coast, you should come to the show.
In the greater West Coast, yeah.
$5. I think you'll love it. We're gonna have tons of vehicles there, and then check out LAVOIE as well. We'll have it all in the show notes. Let's get riding, Julia. Hope you have a great weekend.
Same thing. Right on.